Parents, we live in the most chaotic, busiest, brightest lights, sensory stimulating environments than ever before. And it can be overwhelming even for us adults whose brain and nervous system or sensory processing integration centers are hopefully fully developed, fully engaged, fully processing everything around us so that we don't get overwhelmed by everything coming at us. You go to the store and you don't get overwhelmed. You go to a restaurant and a ton of kids are running around. There's a lot of action going on at the different tables, a lot of conversations that you're hearing, or any of the multitudes of examples we can give you as families who go through daily life and all that comes with it. The noise, the chaos, the sensory information, hopefully you're not getting overwhelmed and you're able to do your daily life with your family without meltdowns, without tantrums, without overload. But what about our kids? Sensory processing disorder and sensory overload is perhaps the most common challenge that families are facing today. And here's the reality. They don't really have a good understanding of what's causing it and any good solutions, because when they go to the pediatrician's office, they're given a lot of solutions that aren't really quality of life improving. Because what experts are telling parents who have kids that have sensory processing disorder or sensory overwhelm is that it's okay when they go to the grocery store that they get overwhelmed. It's okay when they can't be around noises or lights. They'll grow out of it. What they say is, oh, when your kid goes into a noisy environment or a busy environment and they're getting overwhelmed, don't worry about it. They'll grow out of it. But unfortunately, they don't. Sensory challenges first show up honestly in infants. It shows up as a colicky, fussy baby. It grows into meltdowns and tantrums, which then morphs into or grows into, not grows out of, but into meltdowns and emotional outbursts as a 2 or 3 year old. And so often what we see is that these sensory challenges aren't grown out of magically in the brain. They turn into ADHD, anxiety, autism spectrum disorder. So imagine, every day at school or even at the park, you're just constantly overwhelmed. And you're overwhelmed by an excessive amount of information. But what if it isn't excessive information that's overwhelming you? What if something else is happening? What if we don't live in a too busy environment? That's where most experts are really pointing the finger right now. Your schedule is too full, back it down, then it'll be okay. Or there's a lot going on in your house, get rid of the chemicals. Get rid of anything that has red number 40. Oh, get rid of sugar, get rid of gluten. That's what's causing the overwhelm. Most of the time for families with kids with sensory processing disorder and sensory overwhelm, the solutions themselves can be overwhelming for you parents, and it's really overloading your quality of life. So what we're gonna do in this video is we're gonna take a different path. We're going to look at it in a different perspective, look at sensory overload and overwhelm from a different angle, and what we're gonna do is teach you what the real root cause is and why it's not just a busy or overloaded schedule or environment, because our kids are just more wound up, more stressed out, and we'll talk about this later, because of what's called the gas pedal or the sympathetic nervous system, or that go, 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 fight or flight side. And we're also going to talk about the good news later on in this video, that there is a solution, a drug-free natural solution that helps your child with their sensory overload, with their sensory overwhelm, that's going to help you, your family, and your child thrive better, do more together. So we're going to move to the iPad so we could use this easy, simple, but perfect visual on really understanding what is sensory processing disorder and what is sensory overload. And we need to really back it up and say it's not just toxins, it's not just a busy environment that has elevated all of this, because our parents were busy. Their schedules were double booked, triple booked, quadruple booked. They lived with lead paint, asbestos, flame retardant in their clothing. What really has changed is kids are going through 2 significant life stressors during the most developmentally significant part of their life in terms of brain and sensory processing development. And that's during in utero development and also the first 12, 24, 36 months, or the first, second, and third year of life. That's when the sensory processing system is developing and learning, hey, this information is important, I'm gonna let you in. That information, the tag on my clothing, my socks, my shoes, the seam on my pants, the flashing lights, the loud noises, not important information, I'm gonna ignore you. So all of these autism, sensory, anxiety, ADHD that has erupted in this generation of kiddos, It's not just genetics, it's not just toxins, it's not just our environment, it's got to be something else. So let's dive into that. What happens in kids with sensory processing disorder is they are shifted. They live foot on the gas pedal, what's called the sympathetic nervous system, or that stressed mode, stressed out, stuck on mode. Now, we need to ask what first triggers this, what causes them to be stuck on this gas pedal. And we're going to talk about it right now, and I alluded to it earlier. It's really 3 significant things, and we lump them all together and we call it the perfect storm. But what is causing that? What is causing them to live on that gas pedal? We're going to go through that right now. So what we have in today's world are moms that are more stressed out, more on that sensory overwhelm themselves during the prenatal period. Number 1, when we really dig into a case history for a child who struggles with sensory processing disorder, 50 to 60% of cases, there was some high stress or high risk during the prenatal or pregnancy period. Mom was just stressed out. The family was going through any certain significant life events, anything like that. And what we know about the connection between a pregnant mom and her baby is that during this period of in utero development, this is really where the brain and the nervous system are developing for a child and letting that baby know where to start with when they come out, where neurologically, where on this gas pedal side, how hard we should be hitting the gas pedal. Now, number 2 is a real big one, so I really want to dig into this with you. 80 to 90% of all the cases of sensory processing or sensory overload, we find that that child had experienced a physically traumatic birth, and usually with birth intervention, usually with some sort of manual assistance, whether that be forceps, whether that be vacuum or C-section, any of these. And we're finding that this is the most overlooked thing in pediatric healthcare right now, birth trauma, birth intervention, and everything that comes with it in terms of how much it shifts the brain and the nervous system to that gas pedal side. Because there's a pre-wiring to be more shifted to this sympathetic fight or flight state. And that's already as early as that prenatal pregnancy in utero development period. That's why we at Sprout Family Chiropractic aim to educate, empower, adjust moms so that they can live their best life, the most incredible life during that crucial period of development, during that crucial in utero brain wiring, nervous system development time. When pregnancy, labor and delivery, and those early stressors set up shop and triggers the sympathetic fight or flight stress mode, what happens is the central or autonomic nervous system shifts too much right up here, and it's as though that child's brain and nervous system is sitting at that 5,000 RPM on this tachometer, this stress meter. That's why they struggle to soothe. That's why they have colic. That's why they have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep. It's that sensory overwhelm that looks different in an infant. And the third and final thing is the toxic stress. Now, we talked about it a little bit earlier, and we do need to give some of it credit. So this part, this upper neck region, this top part, upper cervical region, what it's called. There's so much sensory on and off switch up here, but it's also really critical for immune function, for, rest and ease. And what happens when there's trauma up here, especially due to things like we talked about before, the birth interventions, that's where we get chronic infections, chronic ear infections, chronic RSV, chronic croup, chronic cough. And then that's when, as kids are getting older, that's when you start getting, always getting prescribed round after round after round of antibiotic. And then after that, that doesn't work. And then going on corticosteroids. Those are the 2 most common treatments for infections right now. And do antibiotics save lives? Absolutely. Do corticosteroids save lives? Absolutely. But they can absolutely be categorized as toxins. Guess what those 2 medications do? They shift the body over to that fight or flight, sympathetic, sensory overwhelm side of the nervous system. Now, the last thing we'll do on the iPad is if your child is struggling and they're in that sensory storm, we need to really look back at the case history. We need to see, did your child struggle with 1, 2, or all 3 of these things? And really look back at, was there birth intervention? Was there a physical trauma? Was there a tough delivery? Was there prenatal or pregnancy stress? Was there, round after medication? Was there toxins in the system somehow? And you feel like, therefore, they did get shifted to that sympathetic gas pedal, neurologically sensory overwhelmed part of the nervous system. And that's why they only have this much slack right here to handle playing with their siblings and their sibling taking their toy, or handling loud or busy environment at school, or even at rest. Their nervous system is just on overdrive and you just don't know why. Look to the case history. And I said earlier in this video, we're going to talk about the solution. So once we find the case history, once we know the case history, we know exactly what we need to do. What we need to do is we need to go into this other side, what's called the parasympathetic rest, relax, digest, brake pedal side. Has everything to do with the parasympathetic nervous system and the vagus nerve. You may have heard of that. And it's going to really depend on how early on we can ramp up this parasympathetic side so that we can balance these two sides, this brake pedal and gas pedal. And that right there is the one thing that neurologically focused pediatric chiropractors do, that no therapy, modality, diet, supplement, no clothing change, no lifestyle change can do other than neurologically focused pediatric chiropractic. And this is exactly what we do at Sprout Family Chiropractic. Our special neurotonal adjusting protocol allows us to gently and specifically turn up this vagus nerve, turn up that parasympathetic side of the nervous system so that we can start balancing between those two stress and rest and digest modes. And what we start seeing is a reorganization, rebalancing, restoring information processing to the nervous system or in the nervous system. It's all about that internal neurological wiring of that central and autonomic nervous system. A sensory overwhelmed kiddo is 24/7 pressing on that gas pedal, and they just go further and further up as life gets more stressful as they grow up. Not only do they have tantrums and meltdowns, but later on in life, they start developing ADHD, they have anxiety, they could develop into these other things that really at the root cause are from that fight or flight sympathetic side of the nervous system. Because when you're sitting on the gas pedal for so long, what we didn't talk about yet is this brake pedal side, this parasympathetic side, is not only for resting and digesting, it's the socialization side, it's the feeling safe, it's the memory and cognition side, it's the behavioral and emotional side of the nervous system. So a child stuck on this gas pedal side right here, that is not going to allow those higher, bigger brain functions to thrive. And no matter where this video is catching you, whether you have a 7-year-old that's been dealing with all of the sensory overload challenges we talked about all their 7 years of life, or maybe you have a colicky baby who is 7 months old. What I want you to do is check out our website for the full article on sensory overload and sensory processing disorder. Inside that article, we talk all about sensory processing disorder, more in depth about the root cause, what we can do about it, what we use to measure and track how far shifted your child's nervous system is onto that gas pedal using what's called insight scans, which measure sensory overwhelm and sensory processing capabilities of your child's brain, body, and nervous system. What we will never tell you is the solution is to avoid life. We want you, your child, your family to be able to experience life, to experience relationships, to experience school, work, friends, family, all of that, and thrive being in those environments. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments, please leave them below. Send us a DM. There's no one else in healthcare that can do what neurologically focused pediatric chiropractors do for sensory overwhelm and sensory processing disorder. Lastly, please share this video, like this video if you found it useful, and we'll see you on the next one.